There, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my rant on the 2017 science fiction horror remake, Flatliners. Now, this is one of those remakes that, to me personally, belongs in the dustbin of cinematic history. It's the kind of film that's on par with the 2014 remake of RoboCop, the kind of movie that as soon as it came out in theaters, it wound up in the bargain bin at Walmart. It's a film that is incredibly forgettable and lazy and totally uninspired. It's the kind of film that exists solely for nostalgia and not for any other reason. It's a remake that does the bare minimum when it comes to trying to do something different or be its own film, and the changes that it does make aren't really that effective. They don't necessarily improve the story. Arguably, it makes things even more generic, which is crazy to think about, let alone say, considering the original film. It's not. I guess that you wouldn't say it's the most original plot in the world, but it did say some new things about life after death. But there were a lot of other films that came out that same year that talked about similar things, like Jacob's Ladder, for instance. So it's not like Flatliners was technically breaking completely new ground to begin with, and then when you get to this remake, it's it's just digging up old bones. Now, it's directed by Niels Arden Oplev, and this guy, I think he directed one of the original Girl with the Dragon Tattoo films before this, and he also did a film called Dead Man Down, but his career was dead. It completely flatlined after the release of this film in 2017. He directed some movies, but he never directed a theatrical film again. Nobody in Hollywood decided to ever give this guy another chance, give him another budget of tens of millions of dollars. And if you've seen this film, you know why. His direction in this is completely lifeless. It's bland, and it's the kind of direction that at times is trying to show off, but does it in the most lazy way imaginable. It's the effort of a director who has talent, who has showcased it in previous works, but is clearly just doing this for a paycheck, doesn't have any real connection with the project, and doesn't have any passion. And as a result, you get a film that I guess is technically competent at times, but at other times it's completely the opposite. Visually, it's inconsistent, it's wildly off the mark. There are certain scenes that look kind of decent or maybe salvageable and have some all right usage of camera angles or different camera techniques, or they showcase visuals in a somewhat stylish way. But then there's other scenes that are completely sterile and bland, and other sequences that are just distractingly uh, over the top or trying too hard. For instance, there's a lot of scenes in this film that feature a lot of slow mo, but the slow mo adds nothing to the scenes. Like there's an overabundance of party scenes in the film, and every single scene that involves these main characters partying or dancing at a club has some form of slow mo. And it just slows the film down, and the movie's already slow enough as it is. And also its usage, like I said, it adds nothing to the scene, it just becomes distracting. And there's other moments where you can clearly tell that the actors were behind a green screen, and they aren't actually acting in a real place, and the director doesn't do anything visually to try to make up for that fact. There's a lot of scenes in the movie that are supposed to evoke a certain kind of emotion, and that emotion never really comes across that well. There were other scenes where it's trying to be suspenseful or have some kind of tension, but the way that the film is directed, the tension is just completely non-existent, or the suspense becomes too predictable because of the way that things are shot. There's not really anything that is really out of the ordinary, or anything that really is surprising, or grabs you or shocks you in that regard. There's just a lot of scenes that are just really uninvolving and uninteresting visually, and they just blend together, and they don't really stand apart from one another unless the director is just randomly trying to show off in the laziest way possible. So yeah, I could definitely see why this was his last major studio film. The movie didn't do well financially or critically, and it's a film that's pretty much been forgotten about after all these years. So it's not like it's a movie that left that much of an impact on the zeitgeist or culture, or cinema as a whole. And his direction didn't really do anything to elevate this film from the flat, lifeless, unnecessary, uh, cinematic, nostalgic corpse that it ultimately is. The script is by Ben Ripley, and this script should have been ripped up and thrown in the garbage. This script sucks. This is another one of those screenplays that just Xeroxes multiple elements from the original film and just makes the bare minimum in terms of changes. They changed the name of the characters. So you have Marlo, Courtney, Ray, Jamie, and Sophia. Uh, it's something that does, I guess, like one or two different sort of things in terms of what happens to the lead character. It has more of a straightforward horror element to it than the original movie, but that doesn't necessarily make it better, because all it does is just makes it more generic and cliched, which is crazy. It's like, oh hey, let's change things up. The original was more ephemeral. The original was more surreal. It was not a traditional kind of horror film. Like, there were some very creepy and eerie scenes in it, but there wasn't really a lot of jump scares. This script decides, you know what Flatliners was missing? A million lazy, just terrible jump scares. That's what Flatliners is missing. Just jump scares up the ass. And that's not at all what the film was missing. The film didn't need that, and this remake proves that to be the case. These jump scares add nothing to this film except make it more annoying and hard to watch. The characters, they change the dynamic when it comes to the main crew, because now there's three female characters instead of just one like in the original, and there's only two guys. So now you have three women, two guys, and other than the character of Courtney, uh, there really isn't a lot new about their flatline experiences that these different characters go through. For instance, Marlo, she is dealing with the sins of her past relating to some kind of mistake she made when she was treating somebody at the hospital. She screwed up and gave this guy some combination that ultimately killed him. Would have been harmless if she didn't already, if she didn't know that he had some kind of medication in his system that would cause complications that were ultimately fatal. So she felt guilty about that, but she changed the documents and everything because she didn't want to lose her scholarship, didn't want to lose her future. So she's being haunted by this particular sin. That's almost identical to what happened with the character. Yeah, Billy Mahoney, like the whole thing with Kiefer Sutherland's character. He was feeling guilty and felt upset because, well, wasn't feeling that upset. It was the specter of Mahoney. The specter of Mahoney was upset because of the fact that he was killed accidentally by Nelson when Nelson was bullying Billy when he was a kid. So when it comes to Marlowe, it's just the same kind of thing, but you take out the bullying aspect. Uh, with Courtney, it's a similar thing. Their whole sins are way too similar because you have the whole thing with Marlowe. Oh, I killed this guy because I prescribed something that didn't interact well with something that was already in his system, and I lied about it. Courtney, she survived an accident, but her sister drowned, so she's getting visions of her sister. So the two are just really similar and just feel like they're just copying and pasting each other. Ray's character is essentially the Oliver Platt character because he doesn't flatline and he's on the outside, and it's kind of the comic relief. Jamie, his character is a womanizer who is faced with the consequences of his actions, but in a less uh, uh, mesmerizing and memorable way. But it's the same thing as the William Baldwin character in the original. Kiersey Clemons' character, Sophia, her character is the same thing as David Labraccio, as Kevin Bacon's character. She has this uh, uh, sin from her past that starts haunting her, and it's because she bullied somebody at school and she bullied a peer at school, caused problems for this person, and that's why uh that particular sin is hunting her. And yeah, you could even argue the stuff with Courtney is just another extension of what happened with Julia Roberts' character in the original with her father. So it's not like they're even giving you different sins for the most part. They're giving you the same sins, but with just the bare minimum in terms of a twist. So that's what I mean by it pretty much Xeroxes the original film. It makes a couple differences in terms of the location of where these characters are. It is another medical school, but it's not really a gothic sort of setting. It's just a very bland, typical clinical setting. And it does have this interesting idea in terms of they do these experiments in a fully functional hospital that's in the basement of the school, that's there just in case there's some sort of emergency, if there's no power or something like that. They have a fully functional hospital on standby, and so they do the experiments in there. And they also have this idea that's created and discovered by Courtney's character, that she's going to flatline, but she's going to put this uh, brain imaging scanner apparatus on her head, and she's going to hook it up to a computer, and she's going to record her brain patterns at the moment of death. So they do add a little bit. I mean, saying they, but really just the writer. The writer does add a little bit to the original in terms of changing things up a little bit in regards to the experiment itself, but it's fundamentally still the same. It's just instead of it being Nelson, a male doctor, or a male student at the medical school who decides to do this flatline experiment, it's a female this time with Courtney's character, and the order of the different people that flatline is very similar. There's one difference the writer tries to do, which just comes across like he was just he was dealing with a deadline and just wanted to get this script written as soon as possible. So there's one moment where there's two flatlines in one night, and it just felt like I need to get this script written. I'm running out of time. Okay, this other girl, Sophia, she's gonna want to flatline the same night as Marlowe, and they try to do something. I mean, I keep saying they because I'm so used to films nowadays having more than one writer, but the writer does try to have a different dynamic with some of these characters in terms of their connection or the relationship with one another or what's going on with their home life. And it definitely changes things around in terms of like the age of these characters. They're a lot younger. So that's why they party and they drink and they do this other stuff. Um, but a lot of these different changes, they don't really make the characters more likable. They don't make them more engaging. It just feels like stuff that's thrown in there because, oh, we gotta make these characters somewhat different from the characters in the original. So let's just change a few little things here and there. And it really fails when it comes to the visions that they have when they flatline. It looks like something you would see out of a Pure Flix movie. In fact, the entire film looks like it would be something that would be made by Pure Flix. Like if Pure Flix made a horror movie, that's what Flatliners is, the 2017 remake. And that's a scarier thought than anything this script can possibly conjure up, if you ask me. It's just one of those screenplays where, yeah, the character building isn't really that great because honestly, a lot of these characters come across as self-centered and obnoxious and not likable. So that really does not help. And I know that you could say the same for the original cast, but I felt there were still moments with them, like with David, for instance. David is a legitimately a likable character in that film, and you have the scene early on in the film where he breaks the rules to save someone's life, but it ultimately winds up hurting him because he gets suspended for that, and then he just wants to quit a medicine altogether. Um, until of course he's brought back in and to help Nelson and everyone else with the experiment. But it does a good job showing that this guy is actually a decent guy. He's a good guy, but everyone else not so much. I mean, the sins that a lot of these new characters are being haunted by, like for example, Sophia, she sent another girl's nudes to the entire class because this girl was a competitor when it comes to grades and GPA and whatever. And yeah, she apologizes later on in the story, but in comparison to what David was doing when he was a kid, he wasn't even in high school at this point. She did this in high school, just completely destroyed this girl. I mean, there's no contest. She just comes across like an absolute bitch. Doesn't matter that she had a change of heart later on. I mean, the only reason why she had a change of heart is because of the fact that Courtney's character winds up being killed by her sin. Because Courtney's character gets killed by her sin, then Sophia's like, oh, I don't want to die, so I'm going to own up to it. So it's not like one of those things where in the original, David owned up to his sin and did his part to atone for it on his own accord, because that's just the kind of guy he is. Sophia was just like, I don't want to die, so I'm going to try to find this girl and apologize. It creates a totally different dynamic that is nowhere near as strong when it comes to character arc and character development. And in the case of Jamie, it's a similar thing. Oh, I better apologize, otherwise this entity or whatever it is going to kill me. So I better find this girl that I knocked up and said I was going to go to the abortion clinic with her, but I chickened out. And yeah, okay, he changes because he decides to stay in the girl's life because she had a son who it's insinuated is his son. And he's going to stay there. He's not going to go to LA and whatever. He's going to get a residency locally. But it doesn't seem like it sticks. Like these changes in these characters, they don't feel earned compared to what happened in the original. Courtney, her character, I don't understand why she is even being haunted by a sin in the first place. Her sin was surviving a car accident. That's what it seems like. It seems like her sin was surviving a car accident because she was with her sister. Car went off the road, went into a lake. She got out and she was rescued. And she even said, like, hey, my sister, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, no, I'm sorry, we can't go back because the van was already submerged in underwater. So her sister was already gone. So that one in particular is like, wait a second. Like, what? Why is she even being haunted by this? She didn't do anything wrong except live. Um, and she's the one that ultimately dies. I'm like, that's really messed up. Like, her sin is bullshit for one. It's not even a sin. Oh, I lived. I'm pretty sure her sister would have wanted her to live instead of them both dying. Um, and she's the one that pays the biggest price. Like, what? Marlowe's character, she is haunted by a sin that's understandable because she did a really messed up thing. I mean, even in comparison to what Nelson did. Yeah, he hit the kid in the head with the rock, and he was with these other bullies, and they bullied Billy and caused him to die. But he was still a kid. It was one of those things where, like, yeah, a kid and made a mistake. It did a stupid thing, and it cost this other kid his life. Marlowe's an adult at this point, and she's falsifying documents and killed a guy because she wasn't paying attention and gave him the wrong meds. Like, it just makes these characters not sympathetic in the slightest. You're like, do I really want them to escape their sins? Do I really want them to atone for this? Do I really want to root for them to be better when they are so bad? Not really. And they do the competitive thing as well. So there's another element that's just Xerox from the original. Like, oh, each one wants to go down and flatline longer than the other. And like I said, the visions themselves suck. So one of the best elements, one of the most visually stimulating aspects of Flatliners, and the thing that I guess you could maybe argue you could actually use somewhat well in a Flatliners remake, you don't get that because the visions are terrible. Like Elliot Page's vision, Courtney's vision is laughable. She floats outside of her body, and I'm saying she in terms of the Courtney character. Um, so Courtney floats outside of her body, goes through somebody's open chest cavity during surgery for some reason. And it's all CGI and it looks like shit. And goes up through the ceiling and out the top of the building, is in the sky, and then she's like walking around or floating around in the sky somewhere, and there's all these like white lights that are floating around, and it's just the most unconvincing green screen and CGI you will ever see in your life. I can't even imagine seeing that in a theater in 2017. It had to have been laughable. And that's her vision. Like, what? The Marlowe, she's swimming. She sees some jellyfish because the guy who died, he got stung by a jellyfish. There are multiple scenes where she's in some dingy a room or basement that looks like it's some kind of set you would see in Hostel, and it's there so she can get drowned to experience what the guy experienced because he drowned to death, basically, because of the interaction with the drugs. Jamie, he's haunted by a baby that cries, different voices that appear on a radio that question him. That's it. Sophia, she sees a vision, a flashback of this just dilapidated classroom with the girl who she bullied appearing every now and then. Courtney, if you want to talk about the other visions that she has, like the horror stuff. Oh yeah, I forgot about like the actual vision that I think, yeah, Sophia, the actual vision she has, yeah, I think it was just a school thing. And then she sees this classroom like all dilapidated later on. Um, Jamie, his initial vision, he's just riding on a motorcycle with this girl, and there's like lights in the sky. That's it. That's all that happens with his vision. So I mean, yeah, in comparison to the unique visions that the different characters had in the original, like it's not even remotely close. And then the horror elements, they're just shoehorned and shoved in there, and it's just bad jump scares. And if you've seen a horror film, not you see all of these coming, and they don't have any impact. Oh, Courtney sees some kind of mysterious apparition in the shower curtain because for some reason the bathtub is now overflowing, and before like the shower curtain was opening by itself. uh like I said, Jamie, he hears these different things on the radio and sees the apparition or a manifestation of his sin, which is this girl that he didn't follow through with stabbing him in the hand with a knife when he's trying to get away in the water because he lives on a boat. Sophia sees the girl who she tormented and ruined her life. Marlowe sees the dead corpse of the guy that she murdered and sees murderer everywhere. And also the horror elements are so try hard that it's just silly. And it also undermines the whole point of Flatliners. Like, why are these sins of their past trying so hard to kill them? It just makes it so there's no opportunity for them to really atone for their sins because they're always in survival mode. In the case, it's like they looked at what happened with Nelson's character in the original and were like, well, that's everything. That's for everybody. And I'm like, no, that worked for Nelson because that's his specific sin. If you make it the same for everyone else, then it just makes the entity or whatever is chasing them just completely bland and boring because now it's just the same for everyone. And it does. It undermines, in my opinion, the message of Flatliners. Like, it's supposed to be you're facing your sins, you're facing them head on, and it's all about growing as a person and atoning for them. It's not, oh, if I don't atone for this sin, it's going to kill me. Like, some of them, it wasn't anything like that at all. But with this, it's the same. Like, Marlowe's getting ready to atone for her sins, and she's made that decision, and the sin is still trying to suffocate her in the back seat of her van. You're like, what? I thought the whole point was you're trying to get these characters to atone for their sins, but now it's just I don't care about that. I want to kill you. I want you to be dead. Well, you can't atone for your sins if you're dead. And yeah, with the whole thing with Courtney's character, like, she had no chance whatsoever, given no time, and just the sin or whatever it has killed her. And like you have this moment where they try to talk about the characters try to talk about how this might not be something good. It could be a demon or something, but that's never clarified by the writer. So it just comes across like it's just a just really bad script that wasn't well thought out and is the result of a screenwriter just half-assing it and just taking a paycheck just like everyone else in this movie. And yeah, the ending, the finale, it's nothing. I mean, it's the same thing too, where one of the characters, instead of it being Nelson this time, it's Marlowe who goes under by herself because she's trying to absolve herself. She's trying to face the sin. But in the process, she almost dies. And like, that's how she learns that, oh, I need to go and apologize to the dean. But even after that, the sin is still trying to kill her. So it's just a mess. It really is. And I know I've spent like a good chunk of this video just talking about the script, but that's the main problem with this movie is the script, because the acting by the cast, it isn't that bad for what they're given to work with. Like Nina Dobrev, I think it's honestly one of her better performances. She's not bad in this. Elliot Page, they're pretty solid. I think this was one of Page's better performances from this particular time period of their career. Like, I mean, before this, there was a lot of direct-to-video stuff, a lot of trying to make up for lost opportunities or trying to recapture some of the indie magic of something like Juno, and that didn't really happen other than maybe Super. This isn't on the same level as Super, but I still thought it was a good performance. They were genuinely compelling and charismatic to me. I actually felt like they actually tried. I didn't feel that they were phoning it in, and in all honesty, they were the best character to me, and that's what made the whole aspect of the script and what happened to them so frustrating. Diego Luna, he's a lot better in Andor and other stuff. Like, he is just so sleepy in this, and just one note. He's trying to be charismatic, but it just doesn't come across that way. It just comes across more awkward than anything. Kiersey Clemons, the most memorable thing about her performance is her really bad haircut. Like, I don't know what her hairstylist was thinking here. It was not flattering. Looked like somebody cut her hair with a weed whacker. That was the most memorable aspect of her performance. Kiefer Sutherland's also in this as a different character as Dr. Barry Wolfson. Apparently, he was supposed to be Nelson, but they cut that out of the movie. It wouldn't have made a difference. If his character was Nelson from the original, this still was not a sequel. This is still a remake because it's pretty much the same film as the original, but with very few differences. And, you know, the cinematography by Eric Kress, it's not excellent, but it's not particularly egregious. It's okay. The editing by Tom Elkins, I felt the same way about that. The music by Nathan Barr, forgettable, in one ear, out the other, nothing to it. They used a lot of songs, like a lot of big popular pop songs from this time. I was never really a big fan of those particular songs, so it didn't really add anything to the film for me. Uh, and it's like 110 minutes, but it feels like 210 because you don't get invested in these characters in the same capacity as the original. The differences to the script aren't different enough to make it stand apart or make it stand on its own. And it's not an effective thriller. It's not an effective Vision Quest kind of movie in terms of like the style or the visuals. It's not effective when it comes to the horror elements, even though it's trying to have more of them than the original. All that does is just make this even more generic and even lamer than it already is because of all the lazy jump scares and bad CGI. And yeah, it's just a flat, lifeless corpse of a film that should be left in the morgue. Leave it in the morgue, never to be pulled out for public viewing again. And yeah, there's a reason why there's not a lot of people who talk about this movie. There didn't get the best reviews when it came out and didn't do that well financially. And there's a reason why you find this everywhere at every thrift store, every bargain market, every $5 bin. Everywhere you go, you will find the Flatliners remake more than likely because no one wants this shit. And it's just a prime example of why we don't need these pointless remakes that exist purely for nostalgia and for no reason other than that. But we still keep getting them, even though they keep flopping and bombing in the box office and people don't like them and people don't want to see them. But it is what it is. But anyway, thanks for watching my rant on Flatliners from 2017. And until next time, I will see you later. See ya.